Let's get real. Are you ready? It's time. Welcome back to Let's Get Real, chatting with Catherine. And today we are welcoming back Debbie Colleen, and we're going to go into the deep. So I hope you're ready for this. We are going to talk about God. Now, let me introduce you to Debbie. She's been using her intuitive skills for over 20 years, helping people to discover what they already knew but couldn't access. She works with tarot cards, astrology charts, numerology grids, and a variety of other mediums. And we're going to get into some of this with probably the help of her guides. I'm guessing that. Debbie always looks for that divine inspiration. And the topic that we've chosen today to talk about is God. So this is going to be deep, it's going to be inspired, and it's going to be fun. So let's get real. Welcome, Debbie.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. Great talking with you again.
Yes.
Yeah, God, that's a really big one.
It's a big word. 3 letters, and it's the biggest word there is.
Dog spelled backwards.
Yes, it's awesome.
Oh, boy.
So, I think that it's interesting because we have so much, we've had a history of religious teachings, and we've had a certain amount of spirituality coming forward, and yet we still have such a, I'm going to say, limited understanding of what is God, and so much so that some people can't use the word God. So
yeah.
They can't even say it. They can't. Some people deny there is a God. Some people just can't say it, so they've substituted another word. Universe, spirit, divine, energy. I can't even, there's just so many words that have been used to define something that is what we call other than us, that's in control. Some other, and even that, I suppose, is up for debate. So, with all the turmoil happening on the planet, this is kind of what I'm being led to ask you. We've got this chaos, shifts, new age movement that's really talking about a shift of the planetary energy, moving into higher dimensions, and all of this. But if there isn't an understanding, and I don't even want to call it a belief because that sounds like a religious thing, but a knowing that there is something other than just what we see in the physical 3D world, something else that we're going to call God for the sake of this conversation. Can you help us to have a deeper understanding? Well, I'm just going to tell the listeners right now, it doesn't matter what religion you are. This is not about religion. We're talking about something bigger, something really big, something that connects us all, something that's just, I think it feels to me like it's so important that we get this in order to move forward in our evolution. It doesn't matter. You don't have to believe it. It's not going to mean the difference between living or dying. It's not that kind of thing. It's more than that. It's about the quality of your life. It's about the peace.
The context. It's about the context that we live our life in, because our context determines what we do and how we do it and why we do it and what we create. It's the context, and we have a small context for God because we're always trying to define God by who we are instead of defining ourselves by what God is. Traditional religions have limited God to, sometimes an avenging God or a divided God. That's a really big one that I find hard to understand. God's power can be threatened by the devils. I just don't get that. How can there be this force for bad that equals the force for good if good created us? Evil and badness didn't have anything to do with our makeup. It's just something that we've created. This is not a creation of God's. We just have a belief in the devil, which is really our shadow side personified.
So this is the creating God in our image as opposed to
Yes.
us being created in God's image. That's the flip side, isn't it? That's what this is.
Well, it's really hard for us to understand God as our creator other than by defining it in our terms. And I think that's where we have to really use our imaginations and allow our guides to inform us and go into some other realm, because we're very limited. Our memory is limited. Our understanding, our mind is very limited in this body form. That's what it is, in this body. We're limited by this body. We're limited by this realm to understand a creator that has no physical characteristics.
But here's the thing that gets me, even, you know, as you're saying, our guides and spirit and all these things. But if you have no understanding that there even is a God, then you would be really limiting yourself, because guides and angels and other forces, like, if you don't have that understanding that there is something other than just your physical body, the physical landscape, you wouldn't be expecting to have any guidance.
Well, and the other part of it is we have free will. So if we don't believe, if we don't have a context for believing, if we believed in something that's been delivered to us in a limited form, how can we go beyond that when we have free will, unless we choose to go beyond it?
Our free will, if we choose to say there is no God, there are no guides, there are no angels, it will be so. It will be true. It will be our truth.
The only thing that counteracts that is that this whole physical realm, this world we live in, and all that we know about it is very purposefully designed to bring us to an understanding of ourselves as divine beings. Everything is weighted in order to bring about that eventual goal that we will have a greater understanding of ourselves in spiritual divine terms.
So everything is designed so that we will wake up.
That's right.
So
and
that's
our free will, when we can resist it and insist on something different as long as we want. However, God actually knows the end, and it's actually, in the terms of what time really is, in my understanding, already it's happened. And when we start talking about these things, and when we have some kind of glimmering that there is something spiritual going on, or a possibility, or, oh my goodness, I want to fight this, then that means that we're actually coming to a point where at some level we are having a conversation with the divine about how the rest of this is going to play out. So it's a mileage marker.
So do you think then that as we're in 2012, we've had all this time on the planet, in numerous lifetimes, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, but there's been a history of humanity for a certain length of time. And from what you're saying, it sounds like we've been allowed to play the game in the dark for a number of years, seeing what we could do with this, this without a real connection to source. Like, we come to the planet and then we forget where we came from, our connection to source. That's part of the game. It's sort of like playing ping the tail on the donkey. You put the blindfold on.
That's what we've created recently.
Can you repeat that, Debbie?
We've created that in recent millennia, I imagine, because I don't think that's the historical background of our relationship with our divinity. I believe that, you know, there was a time in, you know, we call it Atlantean, and other ages, and there's so much evidence that other civilizations have had a much closer understanding. But I do believe in the last 2,000 years at least, we've really submerged ourselves in this experience of the physical. Maybe because it is the last 2,000 years. Maybe those 2,000 years were the 2,000 years when we were really capable of submerging ourselves without deleting ourselves.
Because we've evolved this far?
Experiment with it.
I'm sorry?
Just to experiment with it.
Right.
Because what's an experiment if, you know, how can we experiment with the physical realm if we don't believe that that's all there is in a certain...
It's like having an experiment with where you already know the outcome.
Yeah.
So you have to not know in order to do the experiment.
And also, if there's some parameters that are affected by knowledge of another part of ourselves, that would be limiting our ability to create a physical experience that encompasses not knowing there's something else. It's just another way of experiencing the physical with, you know, by changing certain variables. That's what science always does. It experiments with various parameters and variables, and this is a really big variable. Do you believe it?
Right.
So we really have immersed ourselves, and I think that took a lot of courage. I don't think it was a mistake, but I think that it's time for it to be over. You know, enough already, enough bloodshed, enough dog eat dog.
Well, what do you think about the concept that... So, do you think God is energy? Is it more than it?
I guess so. I guess that's what it would be. To me, God is everything. Everything that is, everything that's been discovered, everything that's not discovered, everything about the physical and the non-physical, and everything that's possible. Everything that's possible.
Wow.
That's God too. I mean, we want to limit God to be a this or a that, and it's not. And we're just not capable, I think, in this form, or maybe any form. I don't know. Do the archangels know what God is? I don't believe that. I think that God is all the possibilities of everything that could be imagined in anywhere in the spaciousness, anywhere in the void.
So in a way, I mean, that's probably the ultimate question. And perhaps we don't have the capacity to really understand, because I mean, if God is infinite, we don't understand infinite.
Yeah,
we don't really.
Well, we chose this physical form to limit the infinite in some pretty finite ways.
Yes,
and that's fine. That's really exciting. But to think that that's all there is,
it's very exciting.
It's pretty limited to think that what we've created here is all there is. You know, that's kind of that just isn't true. You know, we just have to look out into space to see that what we have here is different from most of what's out there.
But it's the old
some things I do know about God. There are some things I do know about God, and I think they're the things that are more important to concentrate on. God is good, and God is love. We have some traditions that portray God as watching us with, you know, in an unforgiving way, a way like a parent with big expectations that we disappoint. I don't think that's true at all. There's even parts of the Bible that say, you know, God looked on his creations and found it good and very, very good. And I think that's the truth.
Yeah. That feels light when you hear that.
And,
you know?
And when we approach life from love and goodness, it sort of seems to work a lot better. And to me, it seems that like what really works to create happiness is probably what's true.
If a person had that full understanding, as you say, God is love and God is good, and they didn't have an understanding that God is judgmental, God is mean, God is revengeful, God is angry, how could you control people?
Well, that's if we had a belief that we needed to control people.
But I'm looking at what's happening on the planet today. If people didn't have that belief somewhere instilled in them, that
well, I think what the truth of that is that if it's not about love, then it's about fear. That's a real traditional adage that if it's not love, it's fear. And fear leads us to think sometimes we need to control. And yeah, so control, I mean, that's part of the physical realm, isn't it? That's what we come here to learn about is what works in the physical and what doesn't. And what seems to be true for many people and for myself is that when I approach things with love and goodness and lack of fear, things work.
Yeah.
And if it works, then that's probably mostly what's true. So with will, we can make a lot of things seem to work. And I'd say that might be more true of the world that was rather than the one we're moving into. I think in the world we're moving into, goodness and love are working better and better and better. Maybe I'm optimistic, but that's how it feels.
Does it feel like more and more people are, feeling from their heart that, making decisions that are based in love? Like, what is best for all concerned?
I think that if we're not doing that, we could blow everything up. We've come to a point where separation and fear and anger and all those things that look like that are fear, our faces of fear, have shown us that if we continue on that path, we're goners.
You mean the planet, generally?
The planet, us, this race. I don't know about the planet. I think the planet can shrug us off at any moment.
Yes.
But we're creating stuff, fear, control that isn't working. Yeah. And we're coming to some big understandings through science as we know it, that there's things going on that don't fit in the paradigms of randomness, disconnectedness. There's really signs of intellect and intelligence, and I think that's the way I want to talk about God more right now.
Okay.
I'm really getting the sense that we need to move into talking about what God is rather than what God isn't.
Okay.
That God is because God is. So you say, I am that I am is how God speaks of himself or has spoken to us about himself.
Right.
I am that I am. I am. So God is intelligence. That's my understanding. God is love, goodness, in a very broad sense, and intelligence. And that part of us that has intelligence that goes beyond mere memory and logic. Logic is part of the intelligence of God, but also the other parts of our intelligence represented by intuition and imagination and curiosity are also very important parts of what God really is. It's intelligence. That there's an intelligence that creates all different aspects of life, and that all of it is God. And we tend to, some people might tend to, label God as the human part of life, that created man and animals, but not seeing man and all that's here on the planet as parts of God. A lot of native traditions seem to have that understanding, and those traditions have seemed to work better environmentally, and they call for us to work better environmentally than we have been, in this very separated sense that we have seen ourselves. And separation, is, to my mind, another word for fear. But when we see ourselves and myself and yourself and the books behind me and the ceiling above me and the dirt on the road and the leaves on the trees and the rocks as part of God, I think that's a different concept than we have learned in our cultural tradition, and sadly so.
Yes, absolutely. There's us, there's the earth, there's God up there in the, universe,
Yeah, and I think
cosmos somewhere.
our growing understanding of ourselves as being energy and everything around us being composed of energy leads itself and lends itself very easily to a bigger sense of the intelligence that God is, because intelligence is an energy.
Yes.
We can imagine intelligence being an energy, and then we can understand ourselves more easily if if everything is energy. Despite what these physical senses seem to portray, we're looking through eyes. We are energy looking through eyes and hearing through ears and speaking through mouths, but these are limited apertures of physicality, and I don't think that, there are huge limitations on who we really are.
Right.
Limitations we've chosen as we've come into this physical realm. And we have to understand that those limitations are just chosen limitations, and they don't represent how the whole universe works, or even how what I could say I see as the unmanifest, the spaciousness, the void, the other parts of God, and also the potential.
Right, the potential.
So we see God as speaking to us through a mouth and looking through eyes, but I think going back to the very beginning of our conversation where we said we try to put God into the limitations of the physical, if we go beyond that, it's just if we see God as an intelligence that pervades everything, absolutely everything in this universe, and also it's a unity. It's not separated. Then we can really see what is meant by unity. If it's all God, if we're all God, that means every second of every day. That means every dust mote. That means everything from the past and the future is God.
Everything we like and everything we don't like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The shadow part of us is also God, and that's the part of God that we're exploring here, the shadow and the light in this physical realm that we've created with God, and that we continue to co-create with divine intelligence, which is another name for God. I think that can expand the context of God from an old man with a long white beard sitting up in the clouds watching our every move, waiting for us to make a mistake, which, I mean, we've all thrown that away. And
well, most people. I wouldn't say we've all thrown that away.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. Because I think there is still a lot of people, even if maybe at a conscious level, they say, oh, yeah, no, I don't believe, I know he's not an old man. But as far as the perception of what it is, even if it's not a man with a beard, it's a something that is in judgment, that is waiting for us to make a mistake, that this is a test, and that the reward is going to be heaven. So this has got to be torturous, suffering, and whatever. And this is what I'm going to ask you. Is this the God you understand that's testing us all the time in that way?
No, I don't think that, I've studied the Course in Miracles somewhat, and the Course in Miracles seems to pretty clearly state that God doesn't actually know we're here.
Well, that's the ultimate
part of God. Okay, so God has so many different parts because we're part of God too, and we have to imagine that there's billions of other possibilities of parts of God created in other forms of what God could possibly show up as. If you believe in angels, there's another part of God, that's manifestly different than people in bodies. But I think that, the infiniteness of God, the everythingness of God, that God is this whole realm, and it is, it's a vast intelligence that we can't even begin to comprehend.
But can I put this in a simple way for me, what you've just said, I'm imagining, as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm fairly aware of my head, my hands, because it's on the camera and that kind of thing. But at the same time, I have other things going on in my body that I am not even remotely aware of. I mean, my liver is still working. It's still doing its whatever it's doing. My digestion is happening. I'm not really, I mean, I know it exists, but I'm not consciously saying, okay, digest now.
Goodness, we don't have to do that.
No, but I was thinking when you said, God doesn't even know we're here. I'm kind of feeling like that. Yes, I know my body. I know as much as I know. I'm not a scientist, but I know, I've got cells and I've got systems are happening. But if I take my body as a very small example of the universe, let's say, and as the body of what is God, so there's stuff going on in this baby finger, there's stuff going on down here, so out in that galaxy and over in that universe and all of that, there's stuff going on all over the time. But I'm not paying that much attention. I'm trusting that these things are happening. So I'm not
saying keep track of what's going on Wall Street. So, how can you imagine another universe or another realm or another timeline or...
I mean, I know that I'm sure, or I have an understanding that God totally has the knowing of everything at any given time, past, present, future, and all eternity, infinite knowing. But when you say he doesn't even know we're here, that to me that kind of is like having that not knowing that my cells are shedding at one point on my skin. I'm not really aware.
Important for us to know that, we've created a lot of fearful things here. How we live in this environment.
Miscreations? Is that the word?
Experiments. Let's just call them experiments.
Okay.
Miscreations has a bit of judgment on it, and I don't want to go there.
Okay.
Because the bigger energy of God is not judging. However, I think parts of God definitely know we're here. Of Course in Miracles talks about Holy Spirit that connects with us and is that energy that is guiding us towards its sole purpose is to bring us back to a fuller understanding of who we really are. We're bits of spirit driving these vehicles, these organic vehicles called bodies, and having these incredible experiences in a physical realm. So often we're asked to understand who we are in terms of the limitations of the physical, and we're not. We're spirit having a physical experience.
Well, that's like the consciousness, like when you were talking about the God being everything, we have set ourselves to, like, you can speak and I can speak because we're human. But my dog can't speak, he's not supposed to. The tree doesn't speak. But these are all consciousness of God. So really, they could speak, perhaps if we could listen. And I do understand, like you were saying about some native cultures, do speak to the trees.
Well, really, at a certain level, speaking is a layer of meaning very separate from what's going on in our mind. It's just another compressing, another pushing through of understanding. It's quite amazing that we even have this understanding what the other person means through these words. I mean, we recognize the importance of body language, but there's also an energetic aspect too that we're more and more starting to understand that conveys even meaning, let alone a relationship.
Well, I'm kind of wondering, like it sounds almost like when I look at evolution, I think about the dog. Well, the dog does have a voice, but it doesn't speak a language I understand. That doesn't make him less...
well, it's my understanding that we didn't used to need language.
That's what I was just going to say.
That you were telepathic, and that we're going back to telepathy. We think of it as an advanced capability, but really we're going back to it as a natural, you can say, human characteristic. It's my understanding that it's not too far in our future, and that there's many beings doing it already, and actually you and I are actually doing it right now, and thinking meaning is being carried by our words. But there is an energetic relationship that we're having even at this long distance of you in Alberta, me in British Columbia. There is an energy that is so pervasive that recognizes no distance as a limitation, that's having this conversation at a different level.
And it feels like that too. It feels like you're right in the same room. And
it does. And really, you know, comparing Earth to Jupiter, we are in the same room.
True. Yeah. But you know, I was thinking, like, when you see God in that, I'm going to say bigger sense, but yet expressing through each of us, like, yes, as expressing through the tree, expressing through the dog, expressing, it's all God.
Expressing through the spider, and expressing through the dust mote, expressing through everything that we have created using the co-creation abilities of God. There is meaning in everything, and the meaning of it is not the physicality of it, it's the representation of it. The pillow has a meaning for us by being a pillow.
Right.
The chair has a meaning, and they are symbolic. We are actually creatures of symbol, and what's going on around us is symbol that we have chosen to see working in a, having its own, concrete, separate meaning. We are creatures, our minds work in a symbolic way, and really what we are is part of God's mind, working through our mind, throwing forth a concept of something that's going on out there, but it's just a reflection. What we live here in this world that we think is real is the dream, and it's the reflection. The truth is happening not just here, but in a bigger way somewhere else too, inside us. You can say inside, it's not physically inside us, I imagine, but in a different realm. It's energy movement that we're not capable of seeing with these eyes at this point in time.
So
some people can. Rachel can see it. Rachel can see things we don't see.
Rachel White seeing now?
Yeah, she sees it through guides coming to us and having energy messages for us, showing up in a form because she can see that. And there are many people who can see it. We just have forgotten how.
So, okay. So
I want to talk about God here in another way.
Yes.
The guides are saying this is really important to pay attention to. And it's, oh gosh, now, it's the invisible. It's, now see, I've lost it. So you go ahead with the...
Well, I'm going, maybe they were leading in the same way. And that was, I was going to say, well, we want to get back to what is God? What is this sense of God that we have? Okay, we've determined that it is not a separate, that we are each individually just parts of the expression of God. Every single thing.
Our physical being disposes us to seeing things as separate, but we're actually not separate. The air connects us. And if you were thinking of life force energy, it's everything. We've created it into separate forms, but it's all life force energy. Prana, or chi as it's called in other cultures, but it is life force energy that is all one thing. And other religions ask us to concentrate on the space between the words and the silence between the bird calls, because that's where you find everything connected together. That's where the true meaning is, because that's kind of where we haven't separated things. In separating it, we've taken apart kind of the building blocks by seeing you as separate from me, as separate from the floor, as separate from the air. We have diminished the meaning of what's really going on in the bigger picture. We're losing focus on where things are actually, where the real action is. That's the words that I've been given. The real action is going on
In the invisible?
In the invisible. If we could only see what's really moving with our energy, we could see, and it's just a matter of training ourselves. I'm not there, I wish I were, but I get senses of it, you know? I get a sense, all of a sudden, that intuition in your mind. You've got an idea fully planted, an understanding comes all at once. Some people have called it a thought ball or an understanding ball. It just comes all at once. That is what really is going on. It's already there. All is already known. God is complete. God is complete in himself or herself or genderless self.
But we've been given the power to co-create. The planet was physically created not by us, by
yes, by us.
Oh?
Yes, by us.
Okay.
We're part of the whole.
Okay, all right.
May not have been our particular piece of the intelligence, our facet of the diamond, our wave on the ocean might not have been differentiated at that time, but we were there.
Okay.
It was, we did create it. We chose to come here. We were looking for this place, and sometimes that looking creates it, because there's a certain kind of energy I've read that we can learn from in a planet with fire in the middle. That was in a text I read somewhere.
So we've continued to, okay, so then we took on human form so that we could, and we created all what's around us now, co-created with the other energies, just to experience it.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Just to experience it. And so it's not, you know, like I think there's so, I always get this, you know, we take ourselves so seriously.
Oh my, yes.
You know, like it's the only game. It's the only game in the universe. You know, very cool. And if you pass, and you did really well. And I'm thinking that, well, it just feels like that. Like, oh wow, really? You actually did that? Like, you can't even imagine what game is being played on another planet or another universe. You know.
Yeah.
But this is, I mean, this is, of course, it's the only one we know.
Yes.
At this time, for most of us.
Mystery. So part of this is we can only talk around it because we're living in the outer, we're living in the physical realm, and we can only talk about the mystery in imprecise terms because the mystery can only be fully comprehended by God, by the completion of it all. But even the little bits that we talk about, we can only talk around it. Because we're only seeing parts of it, and there's so much more. And we're actually capable of seeing more and more and more as we go that inevitable route of becoming more of who we actually are, remembering, which is and coming back together. Along with that remembering, experiencing the new that we're creating in each go-round or each moment, we're creating more and more. So that's the experimenting with itself and creating more all the time. That's what God does. God expands continually. God enhances, and the inner and the outer, time-wise and in every parameter, like the tree that grows longer branches and more branches and fills them up with more leaves in every season and then dies and propagates more trees. We live in an enhancing, expanding universe.
But, you know, okay, so I'm not assuming you know the mind of God. I'm not. But I want the listener to know that this is not where we're going. We're speculating in some ways. Some of it's philosophy. Some of it you know that you know. And that does not mean that what we come to discuss or know is their truth. It's your truth. You're telling your truth. I'm speaking from my truth. Because that's the whole point of it. As different little facets, as you say, diamonds of God, would want to express in different ways. But I'm kind of wondering, because of the, you know, the shifts on the planet, the changes, the belief or the sort of collective coming together of that we're going into a golden age. Some people say we're not going to have to reincarnate anymore, that we have to, you know, okay, so if God is all of us, if that was true, if this cycle is over, or, okay, let's say, I'm going to ask you, is the cycle over?
I think cycles are always over. And they're always changing and morphing into something else. It's hard to say. I think what we're doing is we are moving into a realm of time or space or whatever, where we're capable in this physical body, in this world, to interact in a much more profound way somehow. It's like when fire was invented, if it ever was invented, it changed everything. And yet when it came into a being, who could even predict where it was going to go? When the apple fell on Newton's head, who could even predict what was going to, how we were going to interpret that and play with it and use and misuse it? Oh, I mean, at this place, there's just a whole new energy available in some form or other. I think that if you were to use some ancient terms, we're moving into, see, we don't even have the words for it in English. We're always translating and borrowing in English from other languages and other realms, but we're moving into a place where we can comprehend more.
Well, do you think the game has been changed? Like, do you think that we played the game a certain way with a lot of violence, a lot of chaos? Oh, I'll kill you in this lifetime, you kill me in the next, and whatever. See how mean I can be. And then we sort of got to the point, well, you know, that game is really messing up the planet, and we're creating, our playground isn't
game. I don't want to play that mean game anymore.
Yeah, I want to play something different. I'm tired of that. I'm growing up. I want something different. Do you think maybe that's what's happening when we have different people at different stages of evolution, where they're saying, some people are saying, but I just got here. I still want to play, you know, King of the Mountain and stuff.
Well, there has to be somebody to be taught. For those who want to be teachers, who are we going to speak to if we, you know, if everybody knows the same thing? There's got to be a, you know, we create our own audience. Some of us are agreeing to be audience, and some of us are agreeing to be fish. And
yeah, well, but that's what I was thinking is, okay, so because there does seem to be, from what I see, a lot more people who are starting to say, I'm not interested in the chaos anymore. I just don't want to do it. You know, like you just don't. And because there's so many more of us on the planet, that it seems like this shift is becoming really like a snowball. You know, it's just gathering and gathering and gathering. And although not everybody's going full bore, they're not jumping right on the bandwagon and saying, okay, yeah, I'm really done. They're saying, yeah, I think maybe there is a God. And maybe there is something else. And
it was only 100 years ago that our mainstream North American culture fully believed in God. I mean, it wasn't even 100 years ago. I mean, 50 years ago. I mean, this idea.